Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Tech for Campaigns Monthly All Hands. There's a ton to get through today, and we have a lot of exciting stuff. So I'm going to jump right in. As always, if you have questions, you can leave them in the QA section. We'll Jessica, I'm one of the co-founders and the outgoing CEO of Tech for Campaigns, which is part of the big agenda this week that we want to tell you about not only the new CEO, but a couple other new team members, and talk about Virginia. The election is being measured now in days. And we're excited to be able to hear from Delegate Mike Mullin, who's on the call with us now. And then Alex, our head of product, will talk about one of the products that is being used this cycle. And then we'll leave a little time for QA. So without further ado, I'm going to get started. Yesterday, we announced some big new teammates. But before that, we were running a big fundraising campaign for the last month, the TFC Virginia Fund, that's funding all of our work across 40 campaigns in Virginia. And last Friday was the deadline. We hit our goal and went over it, so we're at 103% of goal. So a huge thanks to everyone who contributed. That was funding all our work in Virginia across technology products and campaigns. As I think a lot of people on this call know, Virginia election is in just under 2 weeks. And there's just an incredible amount at stake. Important issues that you care about, access to women's health care, gun violence prevention, education, equal rights, and obviously also redistricting, because the state legislatures will control the federal redistricting done in 2020. So it's huge. And finally, it's just a huge bellwether for what's going to happen in 2020 with the broader elections, and usually a signal to Trump. So I can guarantee you he'll be watching. So a huge thank you to everyone who was part of that and been part of the teams. As a reminder, state legislatures are not only deciding on important things currently, but they're actually sort of a pipeline to higher office. If you guys saw Matt Gaetz, is that how we say his name? We're not sure, but we're not super concerned either. He is a former Florida state rep that is now a congressperson and is sort of leading this terrible charge to make impeachment sort of a joke. So these are just examples of where state legislatures end up. Um, 44% of senators. So there's a guy that some of you know, Barack Obama, started as a state senator as well. So it's really a farm team for the federal elections, but also it's just incredibly important laws that they pass every single day. So this is one of the reasons that TFC really supports the state senates and the state houses. I think everyone has seen this, but in case you haven't, we have pretty broad goals on the state level in 2020. We have 15 states and 20 chambers that we're targeting. You can see them all here, and there's a much broader explanation of how we target them on our blog and on our site. So I encourage you guys to look at that. But that work, just so you know, like the majority of the organizations focused on Virginia, but our have committed to every state that we're going to be helping. And so there's just an incredible amount of work to do. So without further ado, I want to just introduce 3 new team members. Lisa Huck, who unfortunately could not join us tonight because she's out of the country, but she is a new board member for Tech for Campaigns. Lisa is a most recently was the CEO of Newstar, which is a data and analytics company. And prior to that, board. Michael Hersher has also joined us as head of operations and program management. I'll let him say hi very briefly.
Absolutely, it's very exciting to be here, and I've been following TFC's work for a while now and delighted to be part of the team. Looking forward to 2020.
Welcome. And then importantly, I want to introduce Tom Perrault, who has joined us as CEO. He is not currently in the office with us, but on the line, and I want to give Tom a minute to say hello. If he's there. Tom? All right, we'll give Tom's intro for him. We're assuming he's having technical difficulties, but Tom was most recently, you there, Tom?
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yeah, now we can.
Sorry, so I was just apologizing for my poor internet, and now you saw how it worked. I'm sorry I'm not on video, but I look forward to, in the months to come for future all hands, I will be. So thanks, Jessica, for that introduction. You can see my background here, but what I really want to focus on is my excitement about joining you tonight, but also about joining TFC as CEO. I mean, I would be remiss if I wasn't thankful to Jessica for being co-founder and an amazing CEO since the beginning, and for the team, many of whom you've heard from previously and you'll hear from tonight, who've done yeoman's work to get to TFC to the point that it is today. So you take a little bit look about my background. I think this is a natural fit with both my passion and my experience. I started off as an attorney, but moved into HR, and most recently, head of HR at a number of tech startups. So joining organizations when they're smaller and helping them grow and scale is right in my wheelhouse. It's my comfort zone. I'm very excited about helping to grow TFC. Equally important to me is, you can see a highlight of my work as board chair for the AIDS Foundation, but I've always been passionate about volunteer work, and I can't remember a time really in my life when I wasn't involved in some way about that. So this feels like a natural fit for me, and I'm really excited about getting going. This is, my first week. And if you get to the next slide, one of the things I just want to highlight on, many of you have seen this previously, which is we have 3 pillars that we focused on: technology, talent, and training. That won't be changing, under my leadership. In fact, I just plan to continue to expand it. Ideally, what is Tech for Campaigns without technology? And you're going to hear a little bit from Alex later about one of our tech products. And then many of you, as you know, you provide the talent, you provide the backbone. You are the people who make sure that we can win in campaign after campaign. And then finally, I feel like training is our secret weapon. And as many of you know, work on campaigns, training is important to help people understand the importance of digital, the power of digital. And when we look at training, I think it's a broader rubric than you might think about. I think it's about changing hearts and minds and a mindset when it comes to the power of digital. So be looking for forward progress on all 3 of our pillars, but I just wanted to emphasize that these are the areas we're going to continue to invest in the years to come.
Thank you so much, Tom. We're obviously just incredibly excited, and Tom and I will be overlapping for the next few weeks. And then we'll have just a really close partnership as I move to the board chair role. So we're super excited about that. And as a quick update on Virginia, we're going to turn it to Alex.
Great. So we want to make sure that you hear from Mike Mullin, one of the current delegates in Virginia, who is up for re-election in just a moment. But just to set the context for folks that haven't seen this, as a reminder, TFC is working almost exclusively in Virginia this year, and that's because it's an incredibly important election. Every single seat in both the state Senate and the House of Delegates is up for election, and the election is in less than 2 weeks, 13 days, November 5th. So teams are doing a tremendous amount of work on ads, on email projects, and past projects on websites to help these candidates win as much as they can. What we've seen is pretty remarkable. So we've helped and continue to help 40 campaigns. We'll complete 85 projects in Virginia alone by the end of the year. And just as a highlight and a nod to all the incredible work that teams are doing, TFC teams have raised almost $160,000 for candidates in Virginia this cycle through email fundraising programs. So really, really incredible work, and we're really excited to see how things turn out in 13 days. So definitely pay attention to our internal Slack, if you're not in our Slack, to our newsletters, to our social media, to look at results in less than 2 weeks. But with no further ado, I will turn it over to one of the folks who is currently in the race and running for election, Mike Mullin.
Well, hello, everyone. I really appreciate the opportunity to be able to chat with you a little bit tonight. My name is Mike Mullin. I'm actually one of the 100 members of the Virginia House of Delegates. When I first came into the Virginia House of Delegates 3 years ago, I was actually the 6th millennial to ever be in the Virginia House. Now I am the 16th. By way of background, I represent the area of Williamsburg, James City County, York County, and Newport News. So if you've ever been to Virginia and you've ever been to Colonial Williamsburg, you've probably come down to my district. So in those 3 years, I've passed 17 bills, including a number of bills to be able to combat domestic violence and human trafficking. And I've in particular focused a lot of my work on being able to protect victims of domestic violence. I work as a criminal prosecutor, mostly doing crimes involving gang violence or murder. And so that's something that sort of motivates me in my professional life and in my political life. Here in Virginia, unlike in many other states, we actually have a part-time legislature. So we only meet for either a month or a month and a half out of the year up in Richmond, and then we all go back to our normal lives. And so for me, it's being a lawyer. For others, it might be being a farmer or being a tech analyst. And I think that's really a genius of Virginia's General Assembly, because we have an opportunity for people to be able to bring their own real world experience into what it is that they've been having to legislate on. I will be very honest, I have never and will never be someone who operates a dairy farm. And yet there are actually members of the General Assembly who do. And so I can go over to them, even if we don't agree on party or politics or just about anything, and say, listen, Mike Weber, I don't know a thing about operating a dairy farm. I'm gonna need your help. And usually they come to me and talk about that when it comes to criminal justice reform issues or when it comes to criminal law questions. Some of the things that have really motivated me has been our fight to expand Medicaid. Virginia was actually 8 years behind many other states. And so we put about $10 billion on the table that we didn't accept from the federal government as a result of not expanding Medicaid. And we had 400,000 Virginians on an annual basis who weren't able to have access to affordable health care. And that was, I guess you could say, a tragedy at best, financially improper, certainly. And, I've never seen a study about it, but I'm sure that people died as a result of not having access to affordable care. But when we finally got to 49 members of the Virginia House of Delegates with our blue wave that came in 2 years ago, we were able to expand Medicaid. We also did a lot when it comes to trying to be able to pass the Equal Rights Amendment. We got to 50 votes for it. But unfortunately, unless you get to 51, it doesn't pass. And so we were one vote away from being the final state to pass the Equal Rights Amendment. And then finally, as I was talking a little bit about criminal justice reform issues, that's something that motivates me in my personal life, my professional life, and my political life. And so I've worked very hard to make sure that we're doing things like marijuana decriminalization, more fair standards in our criminal justice system, and making sure that people aren't unnecessarily held because of mandatory minimums. So that's sort of one of the things that are motivating me. I can tell you that when it comes to interacting with my constituents, I only represent 82,000 people. So unlike places in California or Florida, our districts are relatively small here in Virginia. It's 82 to 85,000 people. And since we're there most of the time with our other constituents, people stop us at the store on a regular basis and just have a lot of questions that they might have not otherwise had. So, you're definitely answerable to your constituency in that regard.
Hey, Mike.
Yes.
Hey, everybody, it's Greg. So I wanted to pivot quickly to mention what's on screen here, which is that the fun facts, I'm the campaign director here now at Tech for Campaigns, but I actually started as a volunteer in 2017 on your race.
I remember.
It's been a fun thing for me, and it's been a fun thing to see sort of back for the re-elect and all that's changed and has not changed. Not changed is your facility with social media. Not necessarily well represented amongst all of your fellow colleagues. So what's one thing that you wish more people understood about how social media has become important for you both as a candidate and
I think the biggest thing is that you have to realize that everything about your life is going to be available and online, and that you're not going to be able to not share parts of your life, whether it's personal or professional. And so you kind of got to go all in when it comes to sharing about yourself on your social media, because people care about being able to know who you are. People care about what motivates you as a person. And so if you try to hold back, it's going to end up online anyway, and it's probably not going to be in the manner and tone that you want. So working closely with some of your partners on the campaign, and then just sort of being yourself online. So I share a lot of the same things on my professional page that I do on my personal, except for I don't share as many pictures of my kids, just because I'm a little bit more hesitant about that. I'm sharing, tonight I was talking a lot about how I burned the grilled cheese that I was making for my kids because one of my sons is sick. And so, people actually want to know that because that's an experience that a lot of people have. So, having a strong digital presence is important to a campaign, and we'll probably talk about that a little bit more, but it has to be personal. It has to relate back to your campaign values, and they have to be in line with your personal values, because people will see past it and see through it if what you're sharing is just the same thing that your campaign manager posts every day at noon about an issue that's supposedly already on your website anyway.
Yeah, right. So we've done tons of work, and we'll toot our horn a little bit in talking about how many candidates we've worked with and all sort of the hopefully great things that we've been able to do.
Right.
Why do you see sort of this work as important? Like what's changed since last cycle? How are your constituents consuming their media?
So it's interesting because my district is got a real dichotomy to it. You represent the College of William and Mary, which is a lot of highly educated, ethnically diverse college students between the ages of 18 and 22 who are on every type of social media platform. Then you have a lot of older, retired, college-educated white voters who are primarily only on Facebook. And then you have a large working-class African-American population, which consume primarily through things like Instagram and a little bit on Twitter. And so, what I've actually learned is that this cycle versus 3 years ago versus 2 years ago, each cycle we seem to have been spending less and less money on mail. So 3 years ago, we spent $220,000 on mail. And then 2 years ago, we spent about $160. And this time we're spending about $117 or so on mail. And each time what we're finding is that mail is less and less effective. So we just did a poll that came back today at 2 o'clock. And what we found from that poll is that we're exactly where we were about a month and a half ago. So we're up 9 points, and we hope to stay that way. But our spending on mail seems to not be very effective. We're making connections with people on Facebook, on Instagram, on Twitter, on general online advertising and email marketing a lot better and a lot more effective than where we are. So we are now spending almost 3 times as much on digital ads as we were 3 years ago. And I suspect not this cycle, but the next cycle will be the first time that we are spending more on digital than we are on mail.
And for the benefit of everybody, I think it's fair to describe that the direct mail, the literal sending of mailers to targeted voters, is sort of the bedrock, or has been the bedrock of communication for campaigns like yours.
It has been, and the rule of thumb has always been that television is the most effective way. Second is always direct mail, and then third is going to be radio or knocking on doors or something like that. And then fourth or fifth is going to be digital communication. And digital communication's just been moving up so rapidly that it's almost hard for campaigns to catch up unless they have a relationship with an organization like Tech for Campaigns.
And what do you think are the sort of biggest opportunities for candidates like yourself that our organization can attack?
One of the things that I noticed was that video advertising, video communication certainly is the way to be able to gain views. And it's also sort of the most personal way of being able to communicate, because it's the way that you get to stumble and bumble as you're being able to talk to people. I'll go live on Instagram or Twitter when I'm out knocking on doors, or when I'm cleaning up after making dinner for the kids. And so that's a really interesting way of being able to go for it. But I would imagine you need to have a candidate who's spent their entire life online and is comfortable being able to actively interact with people in the digital sphere.
Yeah, that's definitely true. And so I guess the quick question: why is TFC been able to be important to your campaign?
Well, right now we are in the home stretch, and the area that we're spending all of our money is digital. We are communicating with people on a regular basis. We've been able to substantially increase our digital interaction, and it's really, so this is the first time that I'm not going on television. And part of the reason is because we can so clearly market just to our voters. I can't, if I go up on broadcast or cable television in my area, I'm buying for an area that's approximately 2.7 million people. And I'm doing that hoping to just hit some of the 82,000 that I actually want. That's a complete waste of money, because I can't target, even on cable, I can't target that well. And so being able to do that through digital advertising programs is probably the best use of my money, the best use of my time, and the best way to be able to communicate with my voters.
Awesome. So for the folks out there listening, which is more of sort of a national audience, if they want to learn more about your campaign and contribute.
Well, they can always go to my Twitter, which is Mike Mullin for VA. I'm on there pretty much constantly, even if it's at 2 o'clock in the morning, because some of the boys are sick. It's the same also for my Instagram, and Mike Mullin for Virginia on Facebook, because I'm going to be on there in about 20 minutes as soon as I get off the phone with you guys. And I'm making sure that my middle son, Henry, he's been homeschooled from sick. He's been home sick from school today. And so he'll probably be somewhere sitting on my lap while I'm probably tweeting about whatever the dinner was tonight.
It's a good grilled cheese, right?
It was a great grilled cheese, all right? And you know what the secret is? It's not using butter, it's using mayonnaise instead. It like crisps a little bit better. Oh man, Greg, you really need to try this. Just once.
I'll check it out.
Yeah, all
A lot
right.
of questions right now about this tactic.
Yes.
I'm just saying, all right? I know it's controversial, but everybody try it just once. Mayo instead of butter. Your life will change for the better.
All right. Well, with that, thank you, Delegate, for joining. And thank you to the TFC teams that have worked on Mike's projects, not only this year, but also way back when in 2017.
I appreciate you all. You guys have been an amazing asset, and I can't wait to see all the great things that you're going to do for progressive candidates across the country. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
All right, I will hand it back to Alex to walk through one of our brand new tools that we have out for campaigns.
Great. So you've probably heard quite a lot about the different volunteer projects that we do, lots of websites, lots of email marketing, lots of advertising projects. And that's a critical piece of the TFC model, of course. But as Tom mentioned, and Jessica prior to that, we do also build technology ourselves. So some of this is built by volunteers, but some of it is built by our internal product and engineering team. And one of those pieces of technology that we've recently built and deployed is called Tabella. Half of it is an advertising dashboard not shown here that allows you to drill in and see how everyone in a specific state is spending. But what we're going to talk about briefly today is the field dashboard that we've built out and deployed in one state so far and have plans to roll out to a number of states next year. So basically what this does is take a lot of data that already exists and make it usable. So you might be surprised, but there's a lot of information about voters, where they live, who is canvassing to them, how many canvass attempts were made, how many were successful, what the actual survey results were, so who supports the candidate that is, canvassing. But that data is very, very, very difficult to get. It basically requires a SQL expert on every campaign or at the state party, and that usually doesn't exist. And so what we did is take all the data that's already there, but not being used, not being seen by anyone, and pull it all together into a really usable dashboard so that caucuses and state parties and anyone that needs to see how things are going in the field can go quickly take a look, figure out, where their resources are being deployed well, where they need to focus, where they need to redeploy resources. And so this is the first version of the product. It's live in Mississippi because Mississippi, it is an election year in Mississippi right now. So they also have elections on November 5th. And as I mentioned, we plan to roll it out to a bunch of other caucuses and state parties in 2020. Before we roll it out, we're planning to build a lot of different features that will allow caucuses and state parties to do really sophisticated targeting to their universes. So you heard a lot about heard a lot from Mike about, specific people that he needed to turn out to vote for him. This will allow caucuses to monitor, exactly who is being targeted in those universes, who is getting contacted and who's not. And again, redeploy resources. So this is something we're really excited about. We've gotten really great feedback from the folks in Mississippi, and we'll continue to build out over the next months.
Alex, just for the folks at home, as we like to say that maybe aren't familiar, until this, what was Mississippi doing to track this activity?
I think the answer is not anything, but I believe they had a very complicated system of Google Docs, and we're looking at individual deployments of specific software on individual campaigns. But the sort of short answer is not that much. They didn't really have that much visibility into what was going on in the field before this.
Yeah, I think huge thanks to Alex for going through this. This is one of our products that is being used now, and is, as Alex said, is built by our full-time team. So a big thanks to them. And we have several other products that we're developing and testing pretty constantly, but we wanted to give you guys a example of some of what we're building. And as Alex outlined, there's opportunity. This is V1. There's opportunity to make it a much richer data and analytics set, and help them understand, what they could be doing better. So that is one of the reasons that we fundraise and have a tech infrastructure fund, and this is the kind of work that can scale to all states and all of their campaigns. If not in 2020, then hopefully by 2022. So it's just it's a core piece of the work that we're doing to help them not spend time manually collecting data, but spend time looking at the campaigns that actually need their help and are behind. So big thanks to the internal team who's spearheaded this. And with that, I think we'll take questions.
So feel free to use the Zoom Q&A feature or the chat.
There's a question about the orange versus yellow on the Virginia slide. Alex, did you have a answer to that?
Yeah, I believe it was contested districts by major party and other parties.
Very
I
nice.
can't remember if it was the House or the Senate, but it was one of those two.
Got
I
it.
believe that to be true. We had one question over email about campaign security. So what can, are we looking at being able to contribute to improving the network and technological security of various campaigns? And the answer is always yes. We want to make sure that when we look at new areas like that aren't currently part of what we do often, that we are able to really do a good job and do it at scale and make sure that we impact many people at once. So it'll be always something that we're looking at alongside the platforms, which are sort of steadily rolling out ways to make the average user more secure. But we find that usually campaigns, even with easier to use software, still need a gentle nudge to be able to use them the right way and use them to the fullest ability. So stay tuned is the answer.
So there's a couple questions about Tabella. I'll try to answer them, but Alex, you can jump in. Tabella is a product. I think there's a question. So is it intended to be a product? It is a product. It is live, being used in Mississippi right now, which is a 2019 election. And it's a great example of where it actually would be harder to have a ton of volunteers helping in Mississippi because they have such a scaffolding of a staff. They have basically 2 people running everything down there. And there wouldn't be a lot of help. So it's a great example of being able to impact them really quickly with technology. And how does a campaign apply to use the Tabella tool, Greg?
So the Tabella tool is designed to plug into Democratic state parties and Democratic caucuses. So the organizations that oversee multiple races in a state at once have a reporting challenge. That is, they have many, many races in one state. And so the current version of the product is designed for them to be able to look at all the campaigns and make sure all the campaigns are doing the right things. It plugs in with the sort of national democratic data infrastructure at the level of each state. So our customer, so to speak, here is the democratic sort of state infrastructure in each state, through which we're able to provide reporting, and they can then provide value to each individual campaign.
But just to answer other questions, yes, campaigns themselves could use it.
Yeah, it's on the roadmap.
It's part of the roadmap for 2019. We wanted it to be for states because there's really not a ton of broader elections that would be using it. But yes, campaigns, even federal campaigns, can come to us to use Tabella. When we go into a state, just to reiterate what Greg was saying, we automatically are working with the caucuses or the party. So it's a conversation we are having with them as we go into the state. But if we were like Mississippi, not in a state, but they wanted to use it, that's also something that we would do. It's not all or nothing. So just to answer that, and the final question on that, I think, is, are there opportunities for volunteers to contribute to product development efforts like Tabella? I'll let Alex take that.
Sure. So we do occasionally have software projects that are volunteer-based or do have volunteers contributing. In the case of a product like this, it is already relatively complex and will get much, much more complex. But most importantly, it's live, and so we'll require an engineering team to basically be on call in case we need to fix anything or deploy new features rapidly, which is just not a great fit for a volunteer project. So the short answer is yes, there are opportunities on this specific project, on a specific product rather, probably not. But the best way to keep apprised of those opportunities is just to take a look at our newsletter and the new projects channel if you are already a volunteer.
I guess the final question on that from Raymond about VAN. So the reason that Tabella exists is because VAN doesn't really have ways to get data out of it and doesn't have good reporting. So, and that's actually all of NGP Van. So we get the data from a copy of that the DNC makes. And you have to work with the states to get that, which is a reason that we initially work with the states. So that data gets put in by Van, but the Van system doesn't let anyone really report on it easily or take it out. And so that's actually why we've built this. Cool. So David's asking, the 2019 cycle's wrapping up. What can we help with for 2020? Is it too early to get involved for that cycle?
It is not quite too early. It will be ramping up slowly. Like most campaign things are on a calendar, and so certainly the bulk of the activity will be happening in the back half of next year. But we are already starting to get sort of foundational interest in that. You'll probably see in the next few months things like rebooting websites for 2020 for caucuses and other sort of structural parties who are laying the groundwork, campaigns as well, email programs, and some perhaps list building ad campaigns as folks sort of start to gear their efforts up and build their infrastructure. So right now, super focused on 2019. But in the coming weeks, we'll start to see some 2020 stuff open up, and then that will probably steadily increase into the new year, and then increase even further probably in the second quarter.
And then Harvey's asking, Mike, meaning Delegate Mullen, was talking about how TV goes to 1 million or more people, and most not in his district. However, wouldn't something like that be a way to talk to people other than preaching to the choir and expand his fundraising base?
It could be. One of the things, though, is that Mike is really after those votes in his district. Votes in the district over don't help him. It may help another one of his Democratic colleagues, but it's the campaign that he's running is really garnered on gathering votes of those 82,000 people. So the amount of sort of overlap that TV market would provide is a very inefficient way to reach those folks. But yeah, it does have some knock-on brand effects, that's to be sure. And the more people know about you generally, probably it has those good effects. But you know, a candidate and a campaign has to make budget decisions with a very limited amount of money, and they'd much rather speak to the people that can actually vote for them. So it's certainly some amount of trade-off, but for the particular circumstance that market presents, it's a much better investment to speak directly to the voters that can vote for you.
I would just add to that you can target people outside of your district on digital as well. And fundraise from them, but it's a much more targeted ask, so you know that you're not just blanketing a DMA, but actually getting to people who seem aligned with your values and beliefs. So it's not like we only can target his district on digital, both are available, but just a much higher level of targeting that digital offers. And also learning. So there's a lot of message testing that goes on. If on Saturday you saw the article that Kevin Roos wrote in the New York Times about digital ads and the Trump campaign really being far ahead of all the Democratic presidential campaigns yet again. One of the things that he mentioned is that the Trump campaign really understands using digital advertising to message test and make other channels better in a very analytical way. That's not necessarily being done by Democrats. So that's one of the other huge advantages of digital, is just that you can pretty cheaply test, especially if you start early, and that can help inform other channels and messaging elsewhere. Awesome, great questions. We really appreciate everyone joining us tonight. There's just 13 days left.
Very few days.
And so it's all hands on deck. We're hugely appreciative of everyone that supported the Virginia Fund. You know, 2020 is already starting, and the number of projects will ramp up, but internally, we will have to shift very, very quickly, not only with the software that we're building, but to support all of the states and campaigns. So there's no rest for the weary, and we appreciate your support. Thanks everyone for joining.
Have a great night.
Thanks.